Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Building Brands That People Care About webinar. We're just starting now, so we're taking a few minutes for everybody to join in. Welcome. My name is Bruna. I am the content marketing specialist here at Cyberimpact. I am joined today by Keri Sculland, who will be introducing herself in just a moment. She's the editing and content strategy manager at Pod Marketing. So this is a Cyberimpact webinar. Cyberimpact is a Canadian email marketing solution that makes email marketing easy for Canadian businesses everywhere. We help businesses and organizations use email to grow the reach and sales while staying safe, very important, and compliant with CASL and all other Canadian legislations and data privacy laws. So thank you for joining us. Keri, I'd love for you to introduce yourself a little bit and talk about what you do at Pod Marketing.
Sure. So I'm Keri Sculland. I am the editor here, the manager of editing and content strategy at Pod Marketing. I lead a team of 5 internal editors and content strategists and a team of external contract writers and editors. And all together, we execute the content for all of the products here at Pod Marketing. So we work in social media, email marketing, we do SEO, we oversee the standards for websites, paid advertising, pretty much you name it, our clients are asking for it and we're doing the content for it.
Awesome. So I'm going to share our presentation with you guys. So for the next about 50 minutes, we're going to be talking about building brands that people care about. So you can join us in the chat if you have any questions. So please leave your questions here. You can also ask them at the Q&A button that's below the video over here. Feel free to send your questions. We'll be reading them through the webinar if they're related to the topic, but we'll also have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. So leave your questions if you have any. So like I said, this is the two of us here at Cyberimpact and Pod Marketing. This is a little intro of Pod Marketing, and you'll also be getting these slides later on. If you sign up for this webinar, you get the slides on the email and the replay of the whole thing. If you're not able to join us for the entirety of the webinar, don't worry, you'll be able to go back and see all of this so you can review. So no need to take notes as well. We'll have everything sorted out for you. So for the next 50 minutes, this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to explain the difference between messaging and branding. We're going to talk about finding your target audience, connecting your messaging with your brand personality, and what is a brand personality? How do you define that? What the right messaging can do for you. This is a very important issue because a lot of brands, they struggle from the early stages of defining their messaging, and then the whole thing afterwards is just like an avalanche that if the messaging is not right, the other parts of the content strategy will simply not work. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can use this in a practical way with email marketing, which is kind of our thing. So let's start with the basics, the concepts, and then I'll let Keri explain them deeper a little bit later. But let's talk about what's the difference between messaging, branding, and content. So in basic terms, this is the why, the how, and the what. So a lot of businesses, you might have heard this, oh, you need to do more content, you need to do better content, because if you don't do content, you're not going to reach your audience. That's great. That's important. That's true. However, you can do great content. You can make the best videos, really high quality videos, and they still don't convert for you. You don't get the leads, you don't get the sales. This happens. Usually a lot of brands don't do the content, but when they do, this can also happen. It's not just posting it, it's posting with a purpose. So we have the beginning of all of it before you film, before you prepare the webinar, before you prepare anything, you need to know the why. This is your business values. This is what your business wants to do in the world. What's its impact? So why are you a business? Why do you have this business? And what is your goal? What do you want to do? For instance, at Cyberimpact, we want to make email marketing easy for Canadian businesses. So this is our main thing. This is what we do. And this is going to drive everything else that we do. So when we do decide to have a strategy, that is going to be our branding. That is the how. How are we going to make people know our why, our reasons, our values? So this is the strategy itself. So it's your communication, the story that we're telling people. And then we get the why and the how, and we make the what. So these are webinars, blog posts, social media content. The content must reflect the messaging through the branding. So this is why it's one right after the other. So when you have a content that is branded, that matches your strategy, that has your imaging, that follows your brand tone, your brand personality, and it's filled up by your why, your values, your goals, and everything, then you can have real results and you can create real engagement with the people who you want to reach, your target audience. Now, you don't find your target audience like this. It's not simple. You don't just look out on the street and point like, oh, maybe this person's my target audience. There's way more layers into that. And Keri, I'd love for you to explain a little bit further about how people can find their target audience and why is this relevant for most businesses.
That's awesome. I think it goes back to what you're saying about knowing what your message is, knowing what your branding is, and then creating the content. Once you have those three things in place, you can start to look at your research demographics, analyze your customer behavior, use tools for data collection, and create customer personas so that you really have a full understanding of who you're talking to. But before you can really dive into how to find your target audience, you need to understand what branding is, just like you were saying. So, in short, branding is really about the process of creating a unique identity for your business or your product using elements like your name, your logo, and design to distinguish it from every other brand that's out there. The key elements of branding include your name, your logo, the color scheme, your typography, and then it comes down to your brand voice and messaging. So all of these things really work together to create your branding. And then you can start to look into how to find your target audience and understanding who you're talking to, because the whole package is important when you're building that brand recognition, the trust, and really importantly, emotional connections with your customers. And that's ultimately how you're going to be driving your sales and your business growth. It's really about shaping how people perceive your business and ensuring that they remember who you are and choose you over similar businesses that are out there. So you need to look at who are your consumers. If you have sales metrics to look at, that's a great place to start. But if you're just getting your business off the ground, you might not have that data to back up your branding strategy. Identifying your target audience is a crucial step in developing effective marketing strategies. And the first thing that you can really look at is your research demographics. So you want to start, this is the perfect list. You're looking at age, gender, education, location, marital status, employment, the languages they speak, their nationality, ethnicity, what does their family structure look like? Are you looking at, decision makers of a family, or are you targeting towards teenagers? Really understanding all of those things is important in your research demographics.
Yeah, I think there's a point in here, sorry to jump in, but a lot of businesses will have that mindset of, oh, but my product is for everyone. Like, oh, I'm a restaurant, so everyone eats food. So my audience is everyone, so I can create a customer persona, and that's just not true, right? Because when you have customer personas, you have a focus, and having that focus really helps you out with your next steps.
Yeah, restaurant is the perfect example. You have so many different types of restaurants. I'm located here in downtown Calgary, and I know a lot of the restaurants around us are really catered towards business people in the area. Whereas I actually live out in the suburbs in a really cute community south of town. And the restaurants there are definitely more family oriented. They have the wing night specials, they're getting people out. So those are two entirely different demographics.
Yeah.
And thankfully, when you're doing your demographic research, a lot of this information can actually be found online. Um, Before we got together today, I was trying to see like, what's the easiest way? Let's figure this out. And all I did was I typed into Google my city name, so Calgary, demographics. And then I got even more granular than that. I went downtown
Mhm.
Calgary, and then I went to my community name,
Mm.
demographics, and really wanted to have a look at what the differences are there.
And
And
that's
I
very important
know
for local businesses, like you said, restaurants, hotels, like neighborhood businesses are, this is essential. Like brick and mortar businesses definitely should be doing this. The big step.
absolutely, and I think it's so cool that you can get hyper local with these
Yeah,
demographics. Um,
definitely.
and I know that we've been taught, way long ago, don't trust Wikipedia, but I'm going to argue that for a second
Yes,
because
I
it's
agree.
it's such a good resource. And then if you scroll to the bottom of the page, it's going to give you links to stats and claims. So
Yes.
that can guide you even deeper into your
Yeah.
demographics research. So once you have all of the demographics, you're pretty set up. You have a general idea of who's around, who you're looking for. If you have current customers, you can look at how they already interact with your product or service. If you don't currently have customers, you're still a startup looking to get
Hmm.
up off the ground and running, have a look at similar businesses in your area. And what I mean by that is like, in your province, in, the next city over, those are reasonable places to look at similar businesses. I wouldn't necessarily compare like East Coast to West Coast because those demographics might be
Yeah.
vastly different. But here in Alberta, luckily we have two major cities. So if I was in Calgary just starting up and I didn't see something too similar to what I was doing here, I'd probably start looking at Edmonton. Um, so you want to ask yourself questions like, what are their buying habits? What motivates them to make purchases? All of this can reveal patterns and insights into what they actually enjoy, like what appeals to them. The next thing that we would look at is what tools and methods do you already have for data collection? It's okay if you don't have anything. Some people might have like Microsoft Clarity to check out what their SEO is
Mhm.
performing well. We have email analytics, Google Business Analytics, all those kinds of things. Um, Another great thing that you can do just from B2C, so business to consumer, you can send out surveys or questionnaires.
Yeah.
You can actually ask people who are visiting you or ask people who are interested in your product or service. Um, Also, if you're just a startup, ask your friends.
Yeah,
That's a
it's very underrated asking people and just saying like, hey, did you like this? Even the I've seen research on this, even the act of being asked, what did you like about your experience when you're in a restaurant or you're a hotel or whatever you are, being asked if you like the experience is makes people more likely to give a positive rating, like to say, yeah, no, I really liked it, because they like that you're asking, you want to know their opinion, they're feeling valued. So there's many tools that you can see, a lot of data. I think it's just a lot of people feel overwhelmed by the information. Maybe they don't know how to translate this into a strategy.
totally. And yeah, I think feedback is key here. Once you
Hmm.
start getting that information from people, you can start making really smart business decisions about your messaging, about your branding, making sure that it's appealing to the right types of people. We've included a few examples here on this slide. Typeform is a great resource, um, as that we have Google Forms on there as well, and SurveyMonkey. That's a really good one too. I think all of these are free. Is that right?
I think all of them have at least a free option. Google Forms is free always. Typeform and SurveyMonkey might have some limitations, but there are many ways that you can ask for information. If you don't have, for instance, you're not working with a website, let's say you're focused on social media, you can even use the stickers on stories Now you can do polls on reels and feed posts. So there are many platforms that have ways for you to ask people for feedback and their opinion. So don't sleep on this. Feedback is a direct line with your clients asking, okay, does this work or does it not work? Don't
Absolutely.
underestimate the power of a good survey.
Yeah, and people love clicking on, like,
Yes.
when I see them in reels or stories, like I'm always clicking like, what should I have for lunch today? Like sandwich or I'm like, I'm choosing for you. I love that stuff. So I can't
Polls
help myself.
on LinkedIn, I'm hoping that more businesses are doing polls on LinkedIn because they're so quick. And not only that, when you have those polls, you can answer and then you get the results. So if it's something that's interesting for your industry, like I'm just clicking because I want to see the results. I want to get that knowledge. So that's also a good thing for you. Just check out if competitors are doing their own polls. Maybe you don't have a lot of data. If your competitors or somebody else in your industry is doing them, use their data. Like it's there, it's available to everyone. So why not?
Totally.
Um, yeah,
And people love polls. It makes us
yeah,
feel appreciated. It makes us
of
feel
course.
important. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great tool to use. So once you've done all of this, you have your research demographics, you've analyzed the behavior of your existing or potential customers, you've checked out your tools for data collection. I think that's when you can really dive in and start creating customer personas.
Yeah.
And you don't need to just have one. I think you can create several. You might
Oops.
have a handful of key types of people that you want to reach with your messaging. So what I would do is, I have a couple questions here.
Oops.
Ask yourself, oh, this is good.
So, sorry, everyone. I don't know why it clicked like
Finicky.
this. Let's go back to the slides. It always
Oh,
happens. It's
we're good
okay.
on our end.
Oh, it's showing?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go
Uh,
for it. Keep going.
so some of the questions that I'd ask yourself, who's your perfect customer? Like really think about who's the person that when they come in through your doors or they reach out to you for your service, that you're just like, yes, this is exactly who needs my service. Exactly, like I'm going to be able to help this person. I have what they need. Write that out. Who's your perfect customer? And then dive a little bit deeper into that as well. So what do they like to do in their spare time? Because, it's one person coming in through your doors, but if you can really think about like, is this a busy working mom? Are they on the go a lot? Think about
Hmm.
those kinds of things because that might
Hmm.
guide you in wanting to make your messaging a little bit easier for them to consume. And maybe you're showing up in places that, they'll see while they're on their go. Um, is it their email inbox? Is it their social media that they're scrolling? That'll really help you define how you're talking to that person. And then on top of that, I like to ask if you met this person on the street, not just when they're reaching out to you professionally for your services, how would you speak to them if you
Yeah.
just randomly met them on the street? Because speaking to them in their own language, in the way that they
Hmm.
like to be spoken to, that's going to help a lot in your messaging.
That's a great question to ask, and it really clicks with finding your brand voice because sometimes you might have in your mind that you're trying to reach a certain audience, you're trying to connect with this customer persona, but your language is just not clicking with them. You're going with this type of language. Let's say you're going very lingo expertise, very technical, very knowledgeable, but you're also making yourself inaccessible to your customer persona because you didn't define how they consume everything. How do they communicate? What is their own language when it comes to those things? This is a great question. I think I could have said it better. How do you speak with your customer persona, your customer personas in plural? Because I agree with you, having a plural number of customer personas is it's definitely very important because you're not gonna just sell to one person. We start at, oh, I can, my product is for everyone, and then you drop just one customer persona. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you don't want to be exclusive. Um, Definitely reaching a broader audience is going to help you build those sales that ultimately that's what you're looking for. And I think too, when we're talking about the language, it's so easy for us to accidentally use industry lingo because we
Yes.
know it. And it's not just marketing, it's in tech, it's in
Yeah,
all kinds of different places. So
sure.
just watch for that jargon and make sure that the
Hmm.
words that you're saying are easily accessible for your audience. They understand what you're
Yeah.
trying to say to them.
Yeah. Even if you're going, this is very important, obviously, on B2C, but even if you're working B2B, sometimes who you're trying to reach is just not that technical. The person who's going to make that purchase of that software or that service, it's not the technical, doesn't have the technical expertise that you're putting into your content. They just want to know, in simple terms, is this worth for their team or their business? So it's not just putting out an image of oh, we know what we're talking about. It's how you communicate that makes the whole difference in the end.
Absolutely. So when you're building your customer persona, I highly recommend that you write it all out, keep it in a
Hmm.
document, and revisit it over
Yes.
time. Because as your business grows, your perfect customer might change a little bit. Um,
Mm.
so it doesn't have to be this permanent thing. I think it can be this ever evolving persona that you have, or personas. How to connect your messaging and brand personality. This dives in a lot to what we were saying about how to speak to your perfect customer. Ultimately, you want to combine three things. It's emotions, engagement, and expectations. And we do that through visual identity and content identity. So that's how your branding looks and
Mm.
sounds. It needs to be cohesive. Um, it has to, they have to meet in the middle so that you're getting your message across in a way that is authentic and makes sense.
Yeah.
um, so number one, we're looking at brand consistency. What I mean by that is that when people interact with your brand, they should know exactly who you are, whether that's through email or social media or paid ads. You're using your visual identity, which is your logo, fonts, illustrations, colors, icons, and photography. That's always going to be consistent across all of those platforms. And then your content identity, which is your voice, your messaging, tone, tagline, your vision, and your mission, all of those guiding principles, they're also going to remain very similar.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that your tone won't fluctuate at all. Um, you might have like a very fun, loud email blast, and your social media might be similar. And then your blogs or your articles might be a little more educational, and that's okay as long as
Hmm.
it's still following the general principles and people are feeling the same in their emotions, engagement, and expectations of your brand. Through that, then we funnel down, we're getting into brand awareness. Once people understand your brand, they know what to expect from you, they'll start to see the consistency pulling through on all the different platforms that you're reaching them. And through that, because you've already built this, the consistency, they're becoming aware of your brand, then they'll really start to get familiar with it. And what I mean by that is they'll start to pick up on it in small ways. Maybe
Hmm.
they see your bottle on the shelf. They're like, oh, I saw that on social media. Or if it's a service that you're offering, um, they see an ad, they click on it, then they get the email, they're interacting with it. That's starting to build your brand equity into that point. And throughout all of that, if you're doing it all in this little package where it's all starting with consistency, people will really begin to trust your brand because they know what to
Hmm.
expect. I like to think of it kind of like meeting up with a friend. I have a lot of long distance friends, but even though I don't see them all the time, I
Yeah.
know that when we get together, I know who they are.
Hmm.
And over the years, we've built that trust. They've been consistent in my life. They're their whole package. So your brand is kind of like your friend in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you put it like that. It's just Even if you're going to go in professional relationship at the office, like, oh, I see everyone in the office, everybody's on their table. Oh, okay. And then you go on Slack and it's like, oh, I see this person is on Slack. Somebody sent a message. This person reacts with this specific emoji. It's like, oh yeah, that's very Keri. She always uses that emoji. And then you go from there and you start building things. All of our relationships are built into little stages. You take little steps here and there. You meet someone, you talk, you get closer, you find those connection points. And then when you realize like, oh, I trust this person or I trust this brand, I feel comfortable around them. And yeah, this is very similar for people who are more in the sales and businessy side, like the sales funnel. You see the same process with different terms, but it's all about funneling down into something that has a high value, which is building trust. Because in the end, that's what makes people buy. That's what makes people keep choosing your brand. It's not just choosing one time, it's the loyalty and the consistency that makes the biggest impact at the end of the day.
Totally. And I think on the next slide, we have a great example of what happens when you have a visual identity that does reflect your content identity. So you have this full package deal. We have Thor on the one side. On the other side, we have, conflicting visual identity and content identity. So you don't want to be sad Thor on the right.
Yeah, this is a great example. It was really funny one. Thank you for bringing back the memory of Infinity, the Avengers Infinity Wars. Yeah, it's like the whole thing when, oh, Thor's appearing in this. Guys, the movie's old. I can talk about it. I'm not gonna spoil
Yeah.
the end, but I'm gonna, like, when he shows up like this, like, oh, this is not what you expect from Thor. Like, oh, that feeling of, this is weird. Wait, there's something wrong here. That is how people feel when they see something from the brands. Like, I don't know. It doesn't sound like someone you know. It doesn't feel like something you're familiar with. So sometimes that breaking point can be interesting. Like you said, sometimes you change the tone. Sometimes you do a rebranding. But the name itself, it explains it's a rebranding. You're trying something completely new on purpose, and you're not just completely disconnecting one thing and the other. Um, Great example. I love this.
So with all of that in mind, how do you actually get started? Um, I find that a lot of times people go ahead and they build out their brand before they go through all of these steps. They
Yeah.
think that building out their visual identity and their voice is going to be their next step, but they miss some important details. And it's a lot easier to use this as guidance before you build your brand, because if you go back later and change everything you built to align with your audience, you might find some disconnect, and really you're making extra work for yourself. I feel like there's nothing worse than bringing something to almost completion and realizing you missed a
Oh
critical
God.
step right at the beginning. So to do this, you can align your brand values with your audience values. Now that you know what interests your audience and what's important to them, what do they do in their off time, um, you, you're understanding what their core values are, what's important to them. And then you can shift your brand values to resonate with them. It doesn't mean that you have to change them. It just means, how do you talk about them in a way that interests your audience?
Yeah.
So this alignment can create like a sense of shared purpose and
Mhm.
make your brand more relatable to the people that you're trying to target. Using consistent messaging and tone, when you're developing your brand voice, it's an important part of your branding. You want to make sure that it reflects your personality. And like I said earlier, you're using it across all of your platforms: social media, email, your website, your paid advertising. If you do printouts, you want to make sure that aligns as well.
Yeah.
Whether your voice is playful, professional, or compassionate, maintaining that consistency really helps reinforce your brand identity. It helps people know who you are. And then you want to make sure that you're engaging with your audience on the right channels. So if you're I keep using the busy mom as an example because that's one of our target audiences.
Yeah.
So I know the busy mom very well.
Yeah.
um, you want to meet them where they are. So I think I
Yeah.
was saying earlier, like if they're on the go, maybe an email is great because they can open that up later. It's right on their phone. It's probably always in their hand.
Hmm.
Are they, you know, waiting somewhere in a waiting room or dropping their kids off at sports and waiting for them at pickup or whatever? Are they scrolling social media? Maybe that's a
Hmm.
great place to meet them. Just
Hmm.
really trying to figure out where they are and meeting
Hmm.
them there. The
Yeah.
less someone has to work for your brand, they don't have to seek you out. You're just showing up where they are, the more likely they're going to be to engage with it. Um, and then also you can tailor your communications to fit each channel. So
Hmm.
like in the email, maybe it's more sales oriented, and the social is more like chatting with a friend, and then your articles and blogs are more educational. That's
Hmm.
totally okay. You can do that while keeping your brand personality intact.
Yeah, that shows also some versatility when it comes to knowing your stuff. You can talk about whatever it is you talk about in many different ways and different mediums. And it doesn't mean you have to do a lot more work. You can recycle content, you can replicate content uh, different ways. And it's not, oh, I have to be in so many channels. I think what you said about finding the right channels makes a whole lot of difference, not just finding people, but this also aligns with the values of your brand. Like, what makes sense for your brand? If you're going for a very technical, very, very techy business, B2B, very something like this, you definitely should be on LinkedIn. And nowadays, oh, everybody's in every social media. There's 60 plus people on TikTok, definitely. But it's your audience. There's our customer personas there. If you're more, like you said, social media oriented, if you have someone who's always busy, what do they open on the phone? It's a great way to think. Like, what apps do they have on the? I remember working with a brand, and they did a really deep thing on how people put the apps on the first screen of their phones, so they know which one's like, oh, which one's closer when they click. That's all UX also kind of thing. But so are people putting our app in the first page? If they're putting there, how quickly can they do the things in our app with just the thumb? Because if they're busy, they might not have the other hand. So doing this makes a lot of difference. So it's that level of understanding of your audience and their habits that might sound, oh, but isn't that going a little too far? I think having more data than less, more data is always best. The more you
Absolutely.
know, the better you can. You don't have to use everything. You don't have to be very nitty picky about everything, but definitely try to get more data, especially if you're starting, like you said. You don't want to do the same thing twice because you jump the gun on your research on creating everything only to find out that your audience is different. Maybe you don't you're not targeting the busy mom. Maybe you have a mom that's relaxed. I don't know that mom is, poor thing, because I mean, it's hard. But maybe you have someone who spends more time in a desktop than on their phone, or someone who prefers to sit down and watch a webinar like you're doing with us today. Definitely, you're taking time out of your schedules to do this. This is different than some people might not be able to watch this live. So we have to think about um, how do we accommodate that as well? Because we also have some people in our customer persona that might be interested in this, but they're not able to join live because they have busy lives. So we have a webinar replay. So these are the little strategies. We don't have to do the whole thing again. We don't have to film another video. We have the replay. So we're using the same content in different ways for different people. So this is just a practical example so you can follow up. In the meantime, while Keri continues to explain, leave on the chat if you have already done the whole process of thinking about your brand personality. Do you have a brand personality? Do you have a brand tone? Or is it something that you never thought of something that you're just starting out to create and to develop for your business? Go ahead, Keri. Sorry for the cut.
Awesome. No, I love it. That's so
Yeah.
important too. And I really like your point on like you don't have to be on every single channel. It
No,
really is
definitely not.
about knowing what works for you. Oh, and I loved your point on recycling content. That is one thing
Yes.
that I swear by that. Write
Yeah.
write a blog, write an article, pull pieces of that for your email newsletter. Break it down into smaller chunks for social media.
Yes.
Use larger chunks of it on LinkedIn. It's that really actually helps with the next point, which is building that authenticity. It's key to building trust.
Hmm.
Um, by doing something like that, taking an article and breaking it down into smaller form content, you're actually ensuring that your brand's actions and communications are genuine and transparent. They're following that thread through everything that you do. Um,
Yes.
ultimately, doing something like that, it helps to establish credibility, and it ends up strengthening the emotional bond that you have with your audience because they're learning about you in so many different ways and they're seeing the common theme throughout. So ultimately, yes, we want to be working towards building emotional connections with the audience. So you can share stories, experiences, or even causes. I think, especially on a day like today, we're talking a lot about mental health. So
Hmm.
those types of things resonate emotionally with your audience. Um, you can use storytelling, visuals, you can use your customer testimonials, depending on your local regulations and depending which sector you're in. Always look into that. But tapping into those emotions helps to create lasting connections with your audience. And finally, encourage interaction and feedback. You can do this again through surveys, Typeform, Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, all of those great resources, or on social media. Even if someone likes your posts or comments on your posts or engages in any way, make sure that you message them back. Because
Yeah.
when you're doing that, you're really fostering a community that helps your audience feel heard and valued. Um, so yeah, just always encourage them to share their opinions and feedback. And when you're responding, make sure to do it in a way that reflects your brand's personality.
Yeah. One point here is that a lot of people, it's also social media managers, marketing professionals, we've all done it. They forget the aspect that it's social media. Social media is supposed to be social. So a lot of people have been posting and ghosting. That means that they post and then they close the app and they just go back again when they want to share something else. So it's you pushing out a lot of content, but you're not responding to your community. You're not engaging with them. You're not connecting with them. You just want their attention. And that's it. You don't go back and read their comments. You don't go back and add more value into the conversation. You just push things. And that's not social. That's just throwing things at someone and saying, listen to me. That
Yeah,
is not a conversation.
kind of like talking at them instead of with them.
Exactly. Yes. So going to brand personalities, so you might be feeling like, okay, I get that you have to have a personality, but what is a personality? Like we start to give a lot of human characteristics to a brand, and sometimes it's hard to see how yours might fit into this. So this is um this is a study that's been done, and someone who's much smarter than me listed out these 5 types of personalities that most brands will fit more into each spectrum. So we have sincerity, excitement, competence, sophistication, and ruggedness. Most brands will fit into these because these are just the big picture. So when you have sincerity, this is about brands who are honest, who are genuine, who are more upbeat, like lighter brands. You see, I use white. This is not also a color kind of thing, like color psychology is a whole other thing. I just use them because you see, you relate to things. Like when you think of sincerity, you think of light tones. Your brand doesn't have to have those colors, but anyway, so you see The examples here, Dove, for instance, it's very well known for these very honest commercials, these very open commercials about talking about the concept of beauty, how people see themselves, how women see themselves. When you think of excitement, if you think about, let's say there was a diving competition, there was another day at Montreal here where we are, there was a diving competition, people jumping into the river from very high ground. It's like, oh, that seems really cool. Who sponsored that event? I think a lot of people will go straight to Red Bull because they have branded themselves as a company that's like all about excitement and sports and action. And that's what an excitement kind of personality is. It's daring, it's bold, it does things, it's into sports, it's into thrilling emotions, like also Nike. Then you can find brands that are kind of in between. And I listed two examples here. We have a Canadian example, that's Bixi. That is the bike sharing company here in Montreal and the whole Montreal area. So Bixi, it's in between excitement and competence. It's pushing people to explore the city, to go out, to exercise, to just live the city you're in. At the same time, it is a tech company, it's a ride sharing company, and it has to show that they're reliable, that they're everywhere, that you can trust them to give you that experience. So some brands, they might go in the middle there. Sometimes you have a lot of sincerity and a little bit of excitement. Sometimes you might have some sophistication and sincerity. You can mix them up, but these are just a general idea of how you can start to define the personality of your brand. How do they fit into this wheel? And then go deeper. What are the little details that make your brand your own? So how would you define your business in this wheel? Is your business honest? Is your business exciting? Are you transmitting competence and knowledge? Are you knowledgeable? Are you sophisticated? Is it a luxury brand? Or are you more into ruggedness? Are you doing outdoorsy kind of brands? Are you putting out content and do you want people to be tougher? Do you want them to be outside? Like the ruggedness for me, it's the easiest to understand out of these personalities because you think of North Face, you think of Timberland, Patagonia, Herschel. These are all brands that immediately, I don't know about you, but I think, okay, outside, outdoors, hiking, open skies, trees, and that's it. That's who they are looking for. So their audience is very clear. So this is the first easiest, most basic way that you can start finding your messaging and then defining your branding as well. I think at Pod Marketing, you work a lot with health companies, right? A lot of health doctors and everything. So I'm guessing like competence and sincerity, they're very important personalities for the brands, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we see a lot of sophistication as well. We have a lot of fashion focused,
Cool.
healthcare type of businesses. Yeah, we're probably in the lower half.
So yeah, so this is a first step that you can do if you're taking something out of this webinar to start your process of rebranding maybe or branding for the first time with a full strategy. Look this over, go back to the slide and think about your brand and which part of the wheel does your brand fit better, and then go from there. And then follow all the other tips that Keri has shared here because this is a first step that you can take.
Yeah.
Then moving on. Yeah, go
Oh,
for
yeah.
it.
I was just going to say, I definitely see us in sincerity, sophistication, and competence. Those are
Yeah.
definitely the top three for us being in healthcare. So with the right messaging, um, it's all about, there's three parts to it. You have your brand strategy, you have how people see your brand. Hopefully they're in alignment because together
Yeah.
that's your brand image. So it's a
Yes.
lot about who you are and who are the people that you want to reach. It's not just your logo and your tagline. Those are essential elements, but they're not the end definition of your brand. Your brand is, it's a lot of work on your end of who you are, but it's a lot of work about how you're perceived as well. So it's all about how your audience sees, hears, and perceives you. Um, once you have the right messaging, we're looking at how does this benefit you? On the next slide, I have a few points. So ultimately, what you're doing is increasing your brand recognition with these elements that we went over earlier. The consistent branding helps you become easily recognizable. I think Dove is a great example. You see Dove on a shelf in a store, like you immediately know what it is. They have soft white bottles.
Yeah.
Even their packaging matches their branding. It's all a feeling. It's the emotion, the engagement with it, even how the bottle feels in your hand. It has this like brushed plastic feeling to it. It's all about how people encounter your visuals, and that even comes down to packaging. It Through doing that, I think that Dove is the perfect example. It's really set itself apart from competitors
Yeah.
because, I mean, if you go to the beauty section in,
Hmm.
let's say, Shoppers,
Yeah.
for our Canadian audience, um, you look at the shelves and you can see, even without the little tags at the top, you can see what's L'Oreal,
Hmm.
what's Dove, what's Aveeno, just by looking at the different colors that they use and the
Yeah.
fonts, and then what's written on their bottles. Um, that is in line with what you'll find on their websites and their socials and all of that.
Hmm.
You know what you're holding in your hand because you recognize it through all of the other advertising that you've seen. And then on top of that, it's catching your ideal client's eye. I am using this example because the amount of times I've been standing in that aisle is, like it's incredible. And I'm making those decisions based on what I've learned through their brand messaging. Like
Yes.
who's eco-friendly. That's what I'm looking for. Oh, phthalates are bad for you. I learned
Hmm.
that. So now that's what I'm looking at. That's what's catching my eye. That's what I'm reading. That's what I'm seeing. And a lot of the time they're meeting me on social media because I'm notoriously scrolling forever. My screen time is unreal.
Well, we work with social media, so
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and then ultimately it's building that brand loyalty. Like
yeah.
I use the same products over and over. I
Yes.
reach for that same brand because I know and I trust them, and it resonates with me in my
Mm.
personality. So I've really connected with all those different brands. And I have a stat on the next slide. Lucid Press they're very well known for their research and innovation. They've
Hmm.
reported that brand consistency can actually increase your business revenue by 33%. So really staying true and staying consistent across all of your platforms and authentic and connecting with your audience, that is worth your investment. That is going to
Yes.
help drive your revenue. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, this is the annual growth goal for a lot of companies. Like it can even be like a very ambitious goal for many industries.
Yeah.
And we when we talk about these like growth and revenue, of course, when you have stakeholders, shareholders and everything, we expect quick results. We forget that consistency is what drives most of the results that we get because it's not one blog post, one webinar, one thing. I always say this, working with content marketing, I am not a fan of going viral. I do not believe in going viral in the sense of, oh, if we do go viral, that changes everything for us. I used to say to people that I work with, if you plan to go viral, if that's what you want to do, prepare because because prepare for what's coming afterwards, because that overnight success takes 20 years in the making. So when you go viral, when you finally reach that bigger audience, you go on Dragon's Den, you go on an event, you come back with 5,000 LinkedIn followers, your Instagram explodes, you're shared by a big personality. When that happens, you have to have your messaging your branding all sorted out. So when people do go visit you, they don't only have that one video, that one post. They have years of content. They have years of material to figure out who you are as a brand. What do you do? Like, are all the links working? Do you have that the is the web server ready to have the influx of people who are visiting? But in all honesty, I think going viral, it's way more about, I wish I could have that big audience like this. When you're consistent, you have that big audience. It's just divided into many, many days of work and weeks of work and months and years and such. In the end, would you rather have consistency that you know you're going to have the X amount of orders every month, or new clients, new leads every month, or do you want to have them all at once, and then who knows when you have them again? So people need to give more credit to consistency, because in the end, I think that's what keeps business afloat. Business stay, as you know, they keep working, they stay afloat because they are consistent with their delivery. The products are good, the services are good, the team is good. And like, when you have this is why you keep using the same shampoo, because you know you can trust that they're going to give you that luxurious feeling on your hair, that your hair is going to feel great. It's one less thing that you have to worry about. So if customers expect consistency from you, you should expect consistency from yourself. I think that's that's a therapy session for brands right here, guys.
Totally. And I think I went through a couple of these really quickly, but I wanted to touch on Duolingo because
Yeah.
while their branding is quite consistent, they do change a lot. And I think
Mm-hmm.
on this slide here, you can see right now, if anyone has Duolingo on their phone, Duo is looking a little ill. Um, and even though Duo might look sickly, we still
Mm-hmm.
recognize it, and we
Yeah.
don't, it's not unexpected from that
Yeah.
brand. If you go to their socials, they have people in the Duo costume doing
Oh my God,
ridiculous
everything,
things. It's so funny.
everywhere.
You have to check it out. It's so funny. So
Yeah.
I looked into this because I was like, why does my Duolingo look sick? I am on a learning streak. There's no reason for this. I looked into it. It's attention seeking, which is not inconsistent for them. They do a lot of attention seeking behavior
Ah,
online. So that's all it is. They wanted you to look it up. They wanted you to go find out. So that's,
wow.
and that is a very interesting tactic. So if you ever get to the point where you're as big as Duolingo, you have a massive following, they've got incredible followings, and they
Yes.
have lots of brand consistency in being kind of wacky and weird, then you can go ahead and you can do things like this for attention seeking behavior.
Yeah,
So that's
this is brilliant.
it's
I was waiting for, like, okay, why is it sick? Because I haven't Googled this, like, oh, why is it sick? But like, okay, I'll eventually stop and look it up because I want to know. It's like, okay, what is it? Like, oh, it's attention seeking. But now you said, I was
yeah,
like, it makes sense. It
yep,
makes sense.
it aligns perfectly with their brand. So I'm not surprised by it.
I I
Although
I thought the excuse was going to be, oh, Duo is sick of your excuses for not doing your language lesson today, something like that. But both ways work, I guess.
maybe that's what they're getting at down the line. I looked it up pretty quickly when it happened
Mm.
because I was like, my Duo is very healthy. Thank you very much. I was feeling personally attacked. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do something, some sort of social
Mm.
campaign to go along with it.
Yeah,
Um, that's just what we can expect from
yeah.
them, which is
And
perfectly in
yeah,
line.
we can expect the unexpected from them as well. I think they're great on this. And what is interesting, it's a global brand, you know, it's a language learning software application. And they have obviously accounts in different languages, so they target to a specific audience. So they have the Spanish, the Portuguese, French, Duolingo, and they're wacky and crazy in all of those languages. But they're
Perfect.
in their own way. So like Duolingo, Brazil, it's completely insane, but in a very Brazilian way. So that really connects with the audience. So sometimes people don't even know that this is a service, that this is an app, that there's sometimes people don't know that there's a company behind it, which is
Hmm.
very interesting. There's an example in the future slide here that I'll be happy to talk more about it because I think it's a big inspiration for people who are doing B2B. But that that to me is fascinating, how sometimes people forget that some profiles are brands, because we have this idea that brands should be exactly this way and very serious and very salesy, and that's just simply not true. Not true at
Absolutely.
all. It varies with your brand personality, your industry, everything. So this is a great example. I love when I can put Duolingo in any presentation.
Yeah, it's always something to talk about.
Yeah.
Um, so I touched on these a little bit earlier, and in the essence of time, I'll go through them a little quickly here.
Yeah.
Um, we are by doing this, you're fostering your customer loyalty, which we talked a lot about already, especially with Dove, differentiating from the competitors. Um, you know, you're the market is crowded. It's how you
Yeah.
stand out, is just being authentically yourself. Ultimately, by doing that, everyone's goal is to drive sales, and alongside that, to enhance your reputation, because those two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Um, and the end goal, really, through all of that, to get there, you're going to want to create emotional connections.
Yeah. And I want to jump in here and give this example. That's this company called TLGV. This is the example I was talking about. They are huge on TikTok, for a B2B company, a tech B2B company, to have 141,000 followers. It's not easy. And you can see they will have literally millions of views in their videos. People forget that they're a brand, and they play around with this. They often share people saying, yes, we are a company, yes, we are selling something, we are AI meeting assistant. But they do it so well, and people connect so well with this because they share the insights of working in an office, of having a dev company fighting with the product company, fighting with the CS and the marketing, the CEO. So they're using everyday situations to connect with their audience, to connect with people who live with these every day. So this is brilliant. If you haven't seen them, they're on LinkedIn, they're on TikTok. I think this is a great example of content for a B2B. And they're breaking also, like, you don't have to have a big scenario, high quality. They're doing TikTok the way TikTok is supposed to be done, which is just filming, very natural, very organic, and they have a very organic communication as well. So I definitely recommend this because they're growing just from making people laugh and feel like, yep, this is me. This is how I feel. I've been through this. That's a very strong connection that we don't realize, making people feel like, oh, this is me. Like, oh yeah, I've been through this. This is a very strong feeling. This is what builds friendships, y'all. Friendships have been built
Exactly.
on this. So if
That's what it
friendships
comes
have
back
been,
to.
yeah. So if you have friends that you've been like, oh yeah, we were doing the same thing, and then we found out we both like this franchise or this, doing this, like hiking or whatever, why wouldn't your brand connect with your audience on the same grounds? It's a great example. Check it out if you haven't. Um, yeah, so go for it. We're almost at the end, and we're gonna check out the questions you have. So if you have any questions, please leave them out on the chat or in the Q&A section so we can get to them as soon as we're done with the next few slides.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, Bruna and I both work in content.
Yeah.
I think we've talked a lot about what it has to do with branding, because it is
Yeah.
partly your visual identity, and content is really how you sound. It's
Yes.
really all about what you're saying and how you sound. Um, So your voice is very, very important. It's a key aspect of your brand identity. When you're building out your branding and your messaging and you have your target audience and all of that, you really want to think about who you are, who your audience is, and then just channel who you want to be.
Yeah.
One way that I really like to explain it is kind of like acting.
Hmm.
Maybe you don't have to act too in depth because your voice is similar to who you are. But especially if you're working for another company, you're doing the content for a place that already has their voice defined.
Yeah.
I like to read through it. I like to try to embody it, become
Hmm.
that person. I put that hat on. And that's just like who I become when I'm
Yeah.
writing from that brand.
And that
Um,
doesn't mean that you're not authentic, that it's not real. It's just you're, like you said, it's a great analogy, acting. And not in the sense of being fake,
yeah.
but really embracing the personality of being somebody else, and embracing all of that. I love that analogy. That's a really great way to explain that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you can think of movies
Mm,
in that way. If you think of like actual famous celebrity actors, they're in no way being inauthentic when
yeah.
they're in a drama or a thriller. Like you
Yeah.
feel really immersed in that. You feel like you connect to it. Movies make you cry, and it's
Yeah.
not because it's fake. It's
Yeah.
because the actor's doing a great job of being authentic through that medium. You also want to think about your specialties. What makes you special? What sets you apart? Your tone is how you're speaking. So your voice is really like the who you are. Your tone is how you're speaking, and it can vary a little bit platform to platform, but it
Hmm.
remains authentically you and
Yeah.
focuses on your core strengths and traits. And then you want to think about your do's and don'ts. Um, how do you want to come across? What don't you want to say? And just really stick with that so that you create that unique branded content.
Yeah. That's awesome. So to wrap this up, I want to give some examples in a practical way. I said I'd talk about using email to do all of this. So I just want to bring some examples in real life. Like, okay, so how do you do all this? Like we talk a lot about concept, about thinking, like Keri explained. The content is what you put out there. So it's the practical part of things. So messaging and branding, that's all you're going to do internally. You're going to think about it, you're going to plan, and then you're going to put it into content that's going to come out into the world. So some things, how are you going to put this all into your routine? So when we talk about learning from your current customers, when you have email marketing, for instance, like I said, we have analytics. When you work with social media, you have your Instagram analytics, you have your LinkedIn analytics, and sometimes we get stuck into, okay, I have to learn something, I have to study, I have to analyze, and you don't know where to start. Well, start with what you already have. If you're putting out content, you have this data, and this is very good data. This is your behavior of your current customers. Get some people get some people on your email list, send a few emails and check out their responses, and then work from there. Like Keri said throughout this webinar, you can adapt, you can adjust, you can change who your personas are. Um, People grow, people get older. Sometimes their lives change. Sometimes your company is changing and evolving to a different segment. You have new products. So every time you have to be flexible. So this kind of everyday data that you have, your email analytics, your social media analytics, they're going to show you in real time what works or not. When we talk about data collection tools, you can use all of those, but if you're using email, you can do something like using microservices on your campaign. So like we said, this is a real example of Bixby. They did a giveaway a few weeks ago. It's like, okay, what did you think about the giveaway? They're not asking if people joined, they're not asking if they would like more. It's like, do you think that giveaway was good? So they're literally asking for feedback just to know, should we do more? Should we partner more with these companies they did with Loto Quebec and the festival in Montreal? So this is an example. This is very simple. It's sometimes it's a yes or no question. Sometimes it's this: very good, good, bad, very bad, or no opinion. People can always not want to answer, and that happens. But you can also, when you talk about several customer personas, have people like, okay, I have this. How do I use this? So if you're using email, you can create groups. You can separate people into lists, into smaller groups. For instance, you can have, if you're a hotel, if you're in the hospitality industry, you can have groups for solo travelers, people who like romantic getaways, families, people who come in the summer, people who come in the winter. For each group, you see that they're different. People who go for romantic getaways, they might not enjoy the same things as a family who's going. Maybe they prefer focusing on a room view. They don't mind so much about the cost of the room, but they care about the service. While families might want to get more affordable options, they're interested in different services. So when you separate, you have the customer personas and you put them into action, that's what it looks like. You're using your tools to help you get all the things that we talked about, all these concepts, all these ideas, and turn them into actions so you can see the results. So this is just a wrap up of everything that we talked about in here. Like I said, you're going to get all the slides sent over to you on your email. So remember that consistency builds trust. Remember to create your customer personas, define your brand personality, build emotional connections, and remember the difference between branding, messaging, and content. This is just a little wrap up. If you have any questions, let's go have a look at them now. I see that there's a question from Allison here. I'm just going to read it out to you, Keri, and you can share your opinion. So Allison said, I work for a number of churches and like mainline churches across the country. Our already present demographics skew 60 plus in age. My question is, how do I use branding content to help my clients connect with more of their right people in younger demographics? That's very interesting. Any thoughts, Keri?
That's a great question. I think in an industry like that, I think really in any industry, it is about meeting people where they are. So
Yeah.
when you're looking for younger demographics, I think you'll probably they're not so much engaged in their email unless you're thinking like mid 20s, 30s, 40s. Those types of people do tend to be quite engaged in their email, but the younger that you're looking, and sorry, Bruna, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that inbox isn't quite the platform. You might want to be looking at like TikTok is a great place for younger demographics, Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have threads now. I don't know if anyone's still using them.
No, I think you have a great point, and I think it's all about also what kind of connection do you want to make, because if you just wanted to share things with your audience, definitely going to social media will help out. Younger people are in social media in general, maybe on TikTok, maybe on Snapchat. People are forgetting Snapchat.
Mhm.
But for instance, you want them to have information about meetings or something like that. Usually a newsletter will help you out more. But then you have to build a path for people to go from social media to that point. Because the thing with social media, if you're looking for younger audiences or whatever audience, it's not chronological. It's not, they're not always going to see it. So you either make them seek you out to see the news, or you go through them in a different way. And it's hard because it sounds like you're having to build them a habit. So it's very specific to each audience and to each industry. So when we're talking about churches or any religious related organization, I think it requires the person that's already interested in that organization. It requires some level of preparedness for the person to want to see that content. Honestly, in my case, I never worked with religious organizations, but I would think offline it's always interesting. I know it's hard being online, but there's so many companies that do great things that you never expect them to do. Like TLDV, they have AI meeting assistants. Sometimes you don't even care. You don't have that many meetings. Sometimes you're a solo entrepreneur but you're following them just because it's interesting. So sometimes you can have a church that maybe you're not in their religion, maybe you don't go to church, but you're interested in how they approach things, how they connect with their community. So maybe that's an angle that you can find, but it is a tricky scenario. I hope that what we shared here can help you out in that way. It's a lot of process of planning out and understanding your audience. Maybe that's the thing. And with older audiences, older when it comes to like 60 plus, definitely going where they are. Sometimes that's Facebook or email or even offline. You know, a lot of people, older people, still go with offline. So, or I don't know, SMS. I think a lot of people are not using SMS as they could for some age groups or demographic groups. So it's an
Totally.
option.
Yeah. And two, if it's a younger demographic, you know, you're working for the church, maybe engaging with their parents, their
Mm,
families, the older family members might be able to help influence those decisions as well.
yeah. In this case, I think asking the younger audience that you already have or that you're interested in having, that's probably the best way because it's sometimes it depends on location as well. Some people will go more to church in smaller communities maybe than bigger cities. So yeah, I hope that we give you some light there on what to do, Allison. We're running on time here. I just want to thank everyone for joining us in this webinar. Just a reminder, it's going to be available in the next few days on our YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/cyberimpact email marketing, you can see it, but you also receive it on your email. Keri, do you have any final considerations, any final comments on this? I thank
Oh,
you so much. This was so great. I loved all you have to say. I think we agree in so many things, and hopefully everyone got to learn a little bit more about branding. And thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
yeah,
Your
thank you.
expertise was amazing.
Thanks, Bruna. It was so awesome to get on this webinar with you. Yeah, if anyone wants to reach out to me, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. Ask me about Duolingo. I have a lot of thoughts. No, this was great, and I appreciate all of the questions. So thank you all so much for tuning in.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next webinar. Thank you, Keri. Bye.
So thanks.